Mr. Deputy Speaker, thank you very much indeed. And although I know she wasn't able to stay for the rest of the debate because she had an urgent meeting, I was very pleased to see the Minister of State in her place earlier, the former Deputy Chief Whip, who will make an excellent addition to the Secretary of State's team. I was also very pleased to follow the speech from the Honourable Lady who speaks for the SNP, because while she was on her feet, the First Minister has caved in and accepted there won't be a referendum on Scottish independence until after Brexit. So I think the credit should go both to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in Scotland, who I think can both share the credit for having helped save our union, which is incredibly important. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it was also a great pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady for Manchester Central, who in her 5 minutes, I think, spent a great deal of money and didn't spend a single second explaining how our economy can generate the money to spend on our important public services, which is what I'm going to spend my remarks on now. First of all, it's still incredibly important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we remain living within our means. Countries that don't live within their means find that over time they aren't able to pay for any of those important public services, which is why it's worth reminding the House that when we came into office in 2010, the deficit was 10% and we were spending £150 billion more than we were bringing in tax revenue. By the time of the election, we'd reduced the cash deficit by 70%, and we'd reduced the deficit as a proportion of the economy by 3/4, and the debt will start falling as a percentage of GDP from this period. And I have to say to the front bench who are laughing, since they opposed every single spending cut we made, the deficit and the debt would have been incredibly higher if they had been in government. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the things we hear from the opposition is they say that living within your means didn't work. Well, actually, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the important things on growth and jobs demonstrated that it did. Between 2010 and 2016, out of the G7 countries, we grew second only to the United States of America, almost twice as fast as our nearest neighbour in France. In 2014, we were the fastest growing G7 country, joint top in 2015 and the fastest growing in 2016. What does that mean for jobs, for opportunities for our young people when they leave? There are 3 million more people in work than in 2010, a record high employment rate, a better performance than in the G7, the OECD, and double the performance from our colleagues in the Eurozone. And for young people, particularly in Britain, when we came to power, the unemployment rate for young people was just under 20%, the same rate as in the European Union and in the Euro area. Of course I will.
I understand the gentleman, the honourable gentleman, is making the point about youth unemployment, but would he therefore agree that it is scandalous that the work of a young person is so undervalued by the party opposite, that the living wage doesn't actually kick in until you are 25? Why is it right that a young person doing a job should be paid less than their counterpart who was over 25?
Partly to do with skills and experience. If you come straight from school into a job, you do have to have had some training and some skills and some experience. And I think if the honourable gentleman talked to businesses in his constituency, it would be very interesting to ask them how someone straight from school with no experience and no work skills should be paid £10 an hour. I think he would find either that young person wouldn't get the opportunity to work or that business wouldn't be viable. If he doesn't believe me, go and talk to some of those businesses. That's what they will tell him. Coming back to the unemployment performance, so when we got elected, our unemployment rate for young people was as bad as it is in the European Union and the Euro area. About 20% of young people are unemployed. 7 years later, in the Euro area and the European Union, the Euro area, unemployment amongst young people is up. In Britain, under a Conservative-led government, it's down 6 percentage points. There are millions of young people who have the opportunity and the social mobility that's generated by having a job, either when they leave university or when they leave school and college and train in an apprenticeship. And even more impressively, Mr Deputy Speaker, despite what the Leader of the Opposition keeps saying, which isn't true, over the period of time we've been in power, income inequality has fallen. The country has become more equal, not less equal, and I think that says a lot about the opportunities that this party will always deliver in government, making those opportunities for our young people and giving them the chances to succeed. My honourable neighbour from Gloucester.
My right honourable friend is making a number of good points about the opportunities for young people. Does he agree with me that in Gloucestershire in particular we've seen a rapid rise in the number of apprenticeships, 7,000 in the city of Gloucester alone over the last 7 years? And does he absolutely support another great opportunity, which is to have a health university technical college serving the people of the whole of our county and beyond?
Before the Speaker left the chair, he did point out that interventions need to be brief. So if anybody finds themselves using the word "and," that means you're making 1 point too many. Mark Harper.
Deputy Speaker, what excellent advice. I'll agree with my honourable friend, the member for Gloucester. He himself has led a number of successful jobs fairs and apprenticeships opportunities in Gloucester, and indeed our honourable friend, the member for Cheltenham, has led on making sure that we can bring in a cyber training centre into Cheltenham to deliver those extra opportunities for our young people in the industries of the future. The final point I wanted to make, Mr Deputy Speaker, in my brief remarks was to touch briefly on local services and particularly social care. And perhaps the part of social care that we don't talk about. Too often when we talk about social care, we only refer to social care for older people. And I wanted to remind ministers that almost half of social care spending in England is actually spent on working age people between 18 and 24. And that social care spending is incredibly important to make sure those people can be independent, have the opportunity to work, and we need to think about how we're going to fund that. It can't be funded in the same way as for older people. Those younger people are not likely to have accumulated assets. If you have means testing, that sets up another barrier to work, and I want to make sure more of those young people can get into work. He will know that our manifesto pledged to get 1 million more disabled people into work, and declaring an interest as the chair-designate of the APPG for learning disability, I want to make sure we get more people with learning disabilities to have the opportunity to get into work and to succeed in the years to come. So I hope the Minister will bear that in mind as the government makes its plans going forward. But I think we've got a proud record. The only thing I regret about our record is that we didn't talk about it enough during the election campaign. If we had, the Leader of the Opposition would not have got away with his irresponsible overspending manifesto that would have bankrupted our country, and I'm glad the people of Britain saw through it and made sure they returned this government to office, where we were continuing delivering for Britain as we have done over the last 7 years in a record of which we can be proud.